Welcome to Mindfulness Manufacturing, the podcast for and with manufacturing leaders. I'm Mike and this is Trevor. We want you to join us on our journey as we help you gain new insights, moments of clarity, and self-awareness.
Hey, if you're willing to step outside of your comfort zone and uncover new perspectives to make your next day better, grab your coffee and let's go. Good day, Mindfulness Manufacturing.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in once again.
Excited today to have Scott Turner on. And he was on a previous episode with Horst, Prelog. There were some specific things that were really found helpful for our listeners. And Scott took a journey down with Magna. He was there 26 years. He progressed through that organization in the 2000 years, working as executive vice president. In that time, taking over some very successful plants with very successful leaders that were very good. And we're going to talk today about when you have something good, how do you make it great in that situation? And we're also going to talk about, how you make those connections with people and also continue to make improvements. Welcome, Scott.
Welcome.
Good morning. Great to be back. I hope your listeners aren't getting bored of my voice.
No, I doubt that.
Good to have you on, Scott.
Yeah.
And so we'll just pick up right from last time. And so Horst isn't here now. So what was it really like working in that culture?
No, he was great. I mean, he was a tough guy. He was clear though. He was transparent. It was tough, don't get me wrong, but he was clear with what his expectations were, very focused. We used to say that he could see a target 100 meters away in the fog, in the dark, and he could see that little bullseye, and none of us could even see the thing there, and he was pointing right at the target. It was unbelievable, his focus, his vision.
So how did that affect you as a person, Scott? You're a very driven person, very results oriented as well. But how getting that eye in a bullseye like that? What shifted for you working in that?
Well, you talked about it, and for those who haven't listened to the Horst podcast, put this one on hold and go back and listen to that. We'll be here waiting for you. Don't worry. We'll be sitting here minding our business. Go do that and come back. Because what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to kind of dig one level deeper. Horst and we as a team, we set the expectations and goals. We had aggressive profit goals. But what did that mean to us digging one level deeper? What did that mean we have to do? As you guys said, we were in a very decentralized operation. We had very successful launches. Return on investment was good. Our general managers were good. But we as let's call it a group within the bigger company, we did a bunch of things like KPI reviews. We did launch reviews. We did business plan reviews. But, the normal things you would do to run a business, but they were more update and advisory type sessions. We weren't really having a big influence or an impact on the divisions in terms of executing towards Horst's big, hairy, audacious goals. We were listening and giving feedback, but we weren't really having that great an impact.
You think about your leadership approach, Scott. What was that approach? Explain to listeners what sort of vision did you have for the leadership team, and why do you have that vision? How did you share it with the others?
Yeah, so we needed to think about these successful guys, girls. We'd had a lot of successes. We had a bit of an arrogance about us. But in many cases, our guys had been promoted to those roles because they were, say, the best tool and die maker or the best engineer. So they would be the best tool and die maker in one division. We'd launch a new division. We'd say, okay, you're the best guy here. Go over and run this division over there and be the general manager. But we never gave them the skills. We never taught them. We never, we might have set expectations, but we didn't equip them with the tools they needed to be general managers. They were the best in the tool room or the best engineer, but they were now responsible for functions that they had no idea about, customer relationships, financial systems, purchasing, HR, all those types of things you need to do to manage a company. But we never really gave them that skill set. If you're lucky, you would work in a company where they might give you some budgeting responsibility. Here, fill out your budget for next year. You might get to go to the customer, particularly if you made a quality issue. You got to see the customer. You might not have wanted to go that time, but you got to go. But in terms of all those broad skill sets that you need to run a division, we didn't give it to them. We at that point, we were just go, growing. But we hadn't put in place any real development program for our key people. In that type of setting, you better be a good listener, because if you don't have a good appreciation of what's good versus bad in some of those other functions, you're going to have a problem as things can sometimes go astray.
When you say listening, is that you listening to them listening to you?
Yeah, I guess where I'm going with that is in typically most organizations, you get promoted based on your functional skill set. You're a doer, particularly in our organization, you're a doer, you get to that level, and then you got to work differently. You have to empower a controller. You have to empower your salespeople. How do you do that when you haven't really learned that stuff? So you need to listen and be open to learn, which I'm going to get into in a moment here, to be able to kind of adapt to those different functionalities that you needed to embrace.
Yeah, and that still happens today. So that's relevant in today's world, where the guy that maybe makes the most amount of parts or has the tool and die background is still being promoted. So I think that's key to think about from a listening perspective. From a learning side of things, talk about that a little bit. Like, what are some of the things over your career path that would still apply to people today in a learning opportunity or learning development program, I guess?
Well, from our side, we had to make it relevant. We had to make it impactful. We had to make it so that people would listen. It's easy, you go to some of these offsite sessions, you go to a training session, and it's a day off vacation. It has to be impactful. Maybe at the end of a good session, you might write down the things that you're going to do different as a result of going to this training session. But how many of those things do you really do? Right? Now, we had the benefit of ongoing interaction with our general managers. So our team was responsible for 12 divisions, which was each division would have been led by a general manager and an assistant general manager. So we had regular interaction with them, as I say, through these various sessions. But what we did is we created this lean leadership development program. So the content was lean, a lean transformation, which is based on the Toyota production system. And for most listeners, they're aware of things like Kaizen, 5S, standardized work, waste reduction, those types of things. But what we did is we integrated the leadership expectation and the role of the leader in this transformation, I guess to kind of broaden the focus. So it wasn't just about applying tools and cleaning up your shop floor. It was about what's your role as a leader in this transformation. So we looked at a couple different ones. We looked at John Maxwell, we looked at Jim Collins, and we've referenced that over the last couple of sessions. Both have some great ideas, but from our perspective, or my perspective, it would tell you what great is, but I wasn't comfortable that it gave you the how. And that's what we liked about Lean. Lean gives you the tools right on the shop floor, making improvements and focus on the people and the team members on the shop floor, and what is your role as a leader within that transformation.
Yeah, and we see that today in both sides. We've seen plants that have strong lean tools and don't even engage the team members and create a very toxic environment. And the other side is that there's some very good environments with some very loose structure, not really having those structure and tools. So that is so common today on both sides. So what's the how look like?
Yeah, so just one comment made about some people's misperception of lean or a charter production system. Some employees or some feeling out there is, well, you're just going to reduce the number of employees, or you're just going to make me work harder and more, add workload. But when you dig right into it, it's not that at all, right? I mean, it's fundamentally based on care and concern for people and helping them be more effective. So from our perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we had a bunch of successful divisions, successful guys, girls. The only way this was going to work is if it started with me. It became real clear that if I just went out there and said, okay, guys, you got to do this, you got to do that, and you got to change, and you got to be better, and et cetera, I was going to get just lip service and people tuning out. So, and that isn't really what TPS is about anyway, the charter production system. So it really had to start with me. How open was I to change? How open was I to embracing that humble learning leader that exists in the TPS system? I probably had the most opportunity to change anyway, so it probably worked well that it had to start with me. But it's tough. It was really tough because I had to kind of blaze that trail, and I had to expose my weaknesses and opportunities to grow. And it's not natural, right? You didn't get to that position by exposing weaknesses. You got them by putting up the barriers and say, I'm great, I'm good. So that was tough.
Yeah, it would be. When you think of, and you said it perfectly, it starts at the top. So if you're going to roll out a program, it's got to be bought in right from the top of the, right down to the shop floor. When you think about lean and our podcast around mindfulness, how do those two go together?
Well, again, about self-reflection, for example, we did a lot of 360 feedbacks. We did a lot of, let's call it personality assessments, but I think a lot of them are overrated. I don't want to discourage people from doing them. I think they can form the basis of a plan, but they're just a building block. I don't think that can be the be-all and end-all. So, as I say, the humble learning leader, by the nature of that concept, it's very much mindful. It's very much self-reflective, and how do my behaviors affect those around me, right? So sure. that was a key focus. Like, for example, in my case, that 360 feedback and stuff, I learned a ton about how my behavior was impacting other people. I was always late for meetings. I would interrupt phone calls, right? I mean, so I was talking to someone on the phone and my phone would beep and I'd say, let me put you on hold for a second. You guys have done that too, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And then someone said, do you realize that sends the message to that person you're talking to that they're not important and what they're saying
exactly
isn't
right.
important?
That's exactly right.
That never dawned on me. From my perspective, it was like, well, there's another call. That other person wants to talk to me, so I have to talk to them. But no, that's not the case. So that's a lot of self-reflection, and like I tell you guys, it really is tough to change. That habit of being late is disrespectful,
Yes, it is.
So that's when I think of the change process that I had to go through, it was challenging, right? I mean, what I found the hardest part about change wasn't so much myself, although that was hard enough, but it was how other people won't let you change. and they have expectations for how you behave. Are you a table pounder? Are you late for meetings? Are you a listener? Are you a teller? All those types of things. And it's easy to allow other people's impression of you affect how you behave. Let me tell you a funny story. So through a metamorphosis of change, one of the things was late for meetings. So I had to make a conscious decision. If you can't be on time, be early. So a few other things that I changed, but that was one of them. And for about 5 years, I was never late for a meeting. And on the personal side, I would go visit my dad and such for these 5 years, and I was never late for any situation, taking him out golfing, doing whatever. And then 5 years through that metamorphosis, I was 30 seconds early. Not late, I was 30 seconds early. And my dad said to me, he said, well, you're always late anyway. I expected you to be late. It's like, whoa, I had not been late for 5 years, but he said, you're always late. And I said to myself, whoa, what an impact that my lateness had on him. And even 5 years after being perfect, he still has that belief. So it was easier for me to say, well, I might as well be late.
Yeah, it lets you off the hook.
Yeah, but I tell you, that was such an eye-opening experience for me, and that's every interaction you have with people. They all have expectations for how you behave, and when you try to change that behavior, they put it in context of how they see you, and it's just tough.
Yeah, it's interesting for the listeners. The 360 feedback, we're familiar with it. Maybe some aren't. It's basically giving feedback from peers, people that work for you, family at times, and they're telling you the things they recognize you're doing well and also areas you can improve upon. And the big thing there, Scott, and the clients we work with, Trevor and I both do the 360s, is being open to want to change. So you can do them all day long, but if you're not willing to actually look at areas that you want to improve upon, it doesn't do much good. Lean and mindfulness, I can think of one thing that goes together, is I really, really loved the involvement of the people that do the work. I thought that is giving respect to the actual person that's hands-on, directly building parts, whatever your business may be. And I thought that is the key to success, because you're engaging the employee into what they do every day. And I really love that.
Yeah, that was really key. As part of our sessions with our GMs and AGMs, we would go to each division. So each division would have the responsibility to create a lean transformation plan. And we as a group of GMs would come from different divisions, and we would go to that one division. We would go right on the shop floor, no boardrooms, no chairs. We'd be right on the floor, seeing what was going on, understanding what's happening, whether it be 5S or continuous improvement, and engaging with the people, the team members right on the shop floor, understanding what was going on. Now, then we would take that back and kind of tie that all together, see what other divisions were doing, do some comparisons. And then we would bring in the leadership piece in terms of, what experiences those particular leaders had, again, in being, let's call it predictable even executive vice presidents need to have standardized work, right? If you're running around like a crazy guy, expect the people around you to run around like crazy people too. Whereas if you get into regular cadence of interaction with your people, every Monday or Wednesday, Friday, you do that, then that will come to be expected as the way to work and to plan and to be reliable in how you lead.
So that means that if you show up late to meetings all the time, you can't hold them accountable for showing up late?
Exactly. I tell you, leaders model. We'll go back to that, but you referenced the issue of the GMs. Some GMs were open to change, embraced it, were searching for change, and they got it earlier, most of them. Some reverted back, they try it, revert back. Some didn't really have an interest in changing. Well, I do things good, and I don't really believe in that Toyota stuff, so I don't want to do that, and the other stuff. I didn't look at that as they didn't want to do it. I looked at it as they didn't get it yet.
Yeah.
So that was my challenge, to keep focused until they did get it.
So yeah, that's what people want to know, is that when you've got someone that doesn't see the benefit of engaging people, using a structured problem solving because they're just doing good. So how do you get that person to see that?
Yeah. Well, you can't beat them with a stick. That doesn't work.
No.
Much as it might feel good, it doesn't work. Sometimes, like some of our people, they would look across at the other division and see what they're doing. So we would do a little bit of, the guinea pig thing, right? So the guys who got it, they would model certain things, and the guys maybe weren't quite there yet. They would look over and say, "Oh, well, that looks like it worked. Maybe I should try that." Couching it in different ways. Well, one of the things we had, for example, was in addition to actual leadership expectations, was they needed to diversify their business. And to get Japanese and Korean business, you needed to have a different focus, right? Typical North American manufacturers, they're impressed with technology, they're impressed with size, they're impressed with, blah, 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 blah. We all come from the same school of aggressive, manufacturing. Toyota and Nissan and others, they're not really built that way. Historically, they weren't built that way. They were looking for, the improvement focus. They were looking for a more humble approach to their business. So we actually set targets, or with working with the divisions had to set targets to become what we called Toyota worthy. So there was a bit of that was one measurable we had that, okay, maybe 5 years from now, you had to have 15% new domestic business, which would be, say, Toyota, Nissan, Hyundai, Kia. So if you have 0 now, how do you get to 15, right? And one of the ways to do that was to help going on this journey and, developing your lean transformation so that when Toyota came to your plant, they would see what you were doing on the floor. They would see your lean transformation, and you get an opportunity to quote, right? Prior, we were not even getting opportunities to quote. So that was one way.
And we tie that a lot into that a good structure will drive the right behavior to get the right result. And as leaders, we need to be mindful of what is the structure that's needed instead of just, words. Today, guys, we need to have some better numbers and keep your eye on quality. Worst introduction you can have to the day.
Work harder.
Yeah.
That comes up a lot. Just work harder.
Right.
So I like the fact that you were able to put some higher level goals to drive the right behavior. And I think if we can tap into what drives behavior, then we can make change. And obviously you guys made amazing changes.
Yeah, it for sure kept coming back to me, right? If I wasn't prepared to make the changes and I was giving it lip service, I couldn't expect the people around me to embrace it. And as I say, it's tough. It's not easy because, people are watching. As leaders, we are always leading, whether we like it or not, right? I mean, you're always on. Whether you're at the grocery store, whether you're with your family, whether you're at an employee meeting, which is a bit more obvious one, you're always demonstrating your leadership. And if people don't warm to that, if you're going to get them modeling your poor behavior.
So if someone was to go down this path, Scott, like what was your results then by doing that?
Yeah, so we had a number of major transformations. Lean is not a short-term commitment. You have to look at it in the long term. We got a lot of good impact on our GMs and AGMs. As I said from the get-go, we hadn't really given them any teaching, training, any ability to grow as general managers. So we definitely hit some good home runs, ground rule doubles. With that, we had much more open-minded, broadly focused general managers. I think we could have entrenched some of the lean a bit better. What happened was the financial crisis of 2008, right? We were kind of just starting to get some momentum. and most of our divisions. And then the financial crisis hit us in 2008, where everything went from long-term to short-term. It wasn't just short-term. It was like, what impact on the bottom line is today, right? Our customers were going bankrupt. Cash flow was frozen. So unfortunately, we kind of fell off the rail a little bit in 2008, 2009. But you're probably going to ask me what I would do differently here. So let's.
Yeah, that was the next question. Yeah, you're ahead of us.
I do feel good about the impact that our program had on the worldliness and capability of our general managers. I think that's lasting. I'm a bit disappointed that I think in a number of cases the lean. I still think there's a few things out there, but there isn't a fundamental change in belief about waste reduction and process improvement. I don't think that's stuck. If I had to do it differently, Horst talked about alignment. I didn't do enough aligning. Alignment with a number of different stakeholders gets you an understanding of timelines, so that when you have those hiccups, when it takes maybe a bit longer than what you thought, you've got some understanding, you've got an alignment. So I didn't really do enough of that. I didn't get enough alignment. My problem there was I was still learning the process. I knew where I wanted to go. I was still transitioning. I knew where we wanted to go. I just didn't know how to get there yet. We were still kind of building the plane as you're flying it. That's never good. So I would definitely do that better. I get better alignment. The other thing is that we didn't do is more measurable results, and not measurable results from the perspective of oh, you're not at that level. Oh, why not? But it's about accountability. It's about understanding what you're trying to achieve and setting these benchmarks and holding people accountable for them. There's this concept of A3 thinking. Did you guys know what A3 thinking is?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. A3 is a one-page summary, 11 by 17, and shows a good description of a problem. And Perfect. It tells a story for our listeners that may not know that. And it forces you to put it on one page.
Perfect. Now, did you learn that back at the company we worked for, or have you learned it since?
Oh, back then. Yeah, that was definitely one of the things. I'd say that's definitely one of the things that we still use today. I use it for customer proposals. We use it for problem solving. And Perfect. It's just, I think everything keeps on evolving to, you can explain it in 10 pages, but do you know it well enough to put it on one page?
Yeah, I feel great now. I feel great that you learned that back then and you still use it. So I
didn't feel great before?
I feel greater.
That's okay. That's good. Yeah, definitely that's an impression. That's good.
But for example, A3 thinking is one of the things that, you don't want PowerPoint presentations. You want to focus on the key issues. And that was a thing that we embraced and we expected of our people. And that's the issue of measurable results that I was talking about earlier. Through the A3 process, you get rid of all the chaff and you focus on those key deliverables, key measurables. What are the key measurables in this lean transformation? And I didn't do enough of that. And related to that, I call it my third one, was accountability for change. And again, whether or not it's the A3 holds you accountable or setting these benchmarks, we didn't drive out accountability enough such that my feeling was that we hadn't carried on enough of that lean transformation. But the fact that you guys are still doing A3s, I feel like $1 million.
Yeah, definitely stuck with us. What's the one thing you would like people to take away from this podcast, Scott? One thing they can walk away and say, wow, that really stuck with me.
So one thing, in our case, we put lean together with leadership development. It doesn't have to be TPS. Whatever manufacturing type approach you want to have, it has to be consistent with your vision or your culture or your expectations for leadership. So I don't want people to think, wow, I don't want to do lean. I want to. It doesn't have to be. You can embrace any manufacturing approach you want, Six Sigma, however you want to run your business, but you kind of need to integrate the concept of leadership into that manufacturing approach. They can't be incongruous. They have to tie together. And I believe that lean TPS was a perfect. It meshed, what do you call it, the cogs of a wheel that meshed together perfectly with that humble learning leader that we expected. But to answer your question, I might have referenced it earlier, and it kind of is pervasive through the comments we've had today. Leaders model all the time. You are always on, right? It's shocking how when we would go into different divisions with different style of leaders, and all those people would behave similar to how that leader behaved. Mm-hmm. And it's so dramatic when you have 11 or 12 divisions with 11 or 12 different leaders. And it's like all those, you got little clones in each of those divisions of that leader. Yeah. And then you got to try to bring all that together. So from a personal perspective, what you need to think about is people are watching you. Another way to say it is every interaction is an opportunity for leadership.
Yeah. And one of the things that we practice is there's a debate on whether you need to be at work one way, at home another way. And if you can just always be present, no matter what your situation is, do the right thing, and realize that people are watching and influenced by you. And if the leader of your organization behaves in a certain way and you want them to behave in a different way, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's a great note to leave on, Scott. Now, I did ask you some of those personal questions before, but there's this breakfast story that I really wanted to hear, and that we've used over the years, and it puts some perspectives on commitment. Can you explain that?
It's lunchtime, so I have to give you a different analogy. No, I'm just kidding around. So you still use that one, do you?
Sure do.
Oh my goodness. I don't know where it came from, but I must have referenced it 9 million times in my career. And well, anyway, so our culture, as you recall, was based on commitment, right? So we expected a lot. Hopefully we treated people properly, but it was all based on involvement. It was based on people's desire to be owning a problem, right? It's not somebody else's problem; it's our problem. We're going to fix it. So we would create this, reference this analogy. It was a breakfast analogy. We would talk about the bacon and eggs in a breakfast. We would say a chicken is involved in a bacon and egg breakfast. A pig is committed to that bacon and egg breakfast. Are you a chicken or are you a pig?
Love it.
Yeah, that stuck with us for sure.
No, I don't use it. You go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely still use that today, and it does signify in everything that you do in life. Are you committed to it, or are you just kind of dropping by and dabbling into it? Because we have a lot of people that will come up about maybe their own self and development, and they'll say, I'm really interested, and I'd like to someday, and a lot of maybes, and it's just kind of like we know right away. It's like that's a chicken.
Yeah. Yeah. The only downside of my analogy that I shared with you guys that I just had a hard time reconciling is the pig is committed in a big way, right? He gives his life for the purpose of that breakfast. But I guess when you think about it, that's a holy cause, right? That's a great purpose in life, and it really exemplifies those that are involved versus those who are committed. So maybe it still holds true today.
Oh, that's awesome. So I just want to thank you again, Scott, for everything that you've done. We referenced the A3s, but really, like meeting you, shaking your hand, you looking us in the eye and making us feel like we're as important as any other person you run into during the day, that's probably the biggest thing that you left with us, is just that whole how to connect with people, how do you engage people. And we just want to thank you for what you did for us then, and the stuff that still lasts today and allows us to be our best selves.
Yeah, and just taking the time and the positive impression of your leadership, yourself and Horst both, and the things that we share and you taught us to share with people, we still do it today, such as the A3. So very thankful and grateful for that.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I do appreciate that. That's much appreciated. You don't get as much of that compliments nowadays as we did when we were working, but that's okay.
Right on. Well, thanks so much, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks for your time.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the time and joining us today. We had so much fun. Please remember to subscribe. It's free. Share it with colleagues. Look for our next episode in a couple weeks.
If you want to drive results, the first step is realizing how you show up.
That's the essence of mindfulness in manufacturing.